intel from camp? Anything that you've picked up here in the last few days?
Yeah, man. I mean, honestly, a lot of the hay's in the barn. They've already had, I think, 16 practices now, a couple scrimmages. I believe they were in shells yesterday, no pad, not even shells. I don't know exactly what the dress code. I think they just had like their jersey on and pants and stuff with no pads. I'm not sure exactly what it was there, but Mike Norvell was complaining. It seemed like the guys were a little bit faster in their light digs that they had on there. But just so fired up. Pretty much everything's locked in. I was talking to you about it in the production meeting. I could pretty much go through both sides of the ball, who we expect to start and things like that. But there are a few question marks, wide receiver, who's going to be that second wide receiver to really step up.
James, 4 practices. What did you see?
I saw a lot of, again, remnants of 2022. So I except for, I think, with a better offensive line. I think the offensive line in the top 10 guys there, the 2 deep, is pretty impressive. Across the board, just the size in general, the guys are pretty impressive. I think the running game with Roy Dale and the amount of patience that he has, and just the different backs that can do different things. I think that's where you're going to see a lot of the spark. One of the things that I think a lot of people also, just because they're not familiar with packages. They just see things like, okay, well, here's my starting running back, right? So that's the guy who's going to get 65 to 70 reps, and that's just not how this game works. But they could go into 20 personnel, put Toa Feely, Sam Singleton, Mekhi Danzy, Jalen Lucas. You could put them at a slot receiver, and you can still have a running back there. And now all of a sudden, your running back, your wide receiver, your quote unquote receiving threats that everybody's so down on, Toa Felix has some of the best hands on the team. So now you can create mismatch problems with how deep they are in the backfield and the type of running backs that they possess. You've got that going for you, and then also the defense. A lot of people, again, only look at, oh my God, I heard Paul Feinbaum, and I get it. We lost quite a few guys to the NFL without looking at the fact of the snap counts. We averaged 25 players, I think, with over 40 plus snap counts or more snap counts. So like they rotate a lot of guys in the game. So I think our depth is going to be great, but this is a team of people who don't have the name recognition that you're used to, which is why I compared them to 2022. Remember, 2022, nobody thought that Johnny Wilson would probably be working with the ones with the Philadelphia Eagles as a rookie. So like and that's kind of where we're at right now. A bunch of talent at wide receiver that we don't know about, a bunch of guys with potential. Now, potential just means you haven't done anything. But at the same time, there's no need to be overly down on what Florida State has. I can easily see it. From what I'm seeing, I see a floor of a 10-win team.
It's also one thing to be tagged with having potential and being some kind of 5-star that's been on campus for 4 years, who's a senior, who still has potential, but just hasn't and has been given every opportunity and everybody's just waiting for it, versus just, hey, you have potential. You haven't been given any opportunities. This is your first opportunity. And for most of these guys, especially when you point to the wide receiver position, like George and I sliced it up last week or the last 2 weeks, and George gave us the rundown of all the paranoia out there. It's not a deal that these guys have been failures. They just are young. They have yet to be given the opportunity, and this is the time to shine.
And they're going up against some of the best DBs in the nation, like in practice. So like even with the practice reports, I'm like, guys, AZ, draft grade. Finchero Cypress, draft grade. Shaheem Brown, draft grade. Earl Little Jr., draft grade. Your D-line, draft, all 4 of your D-linemen, draft grades. Like you're going up against an NFL defense, and you haven't done anything. Like somebody in the group chat that I'm in, they brought up, man, all of Georgia Tech's wide receiver core pales in comparison to our guys. I'm like, yeah, everybody came back. Keon didn't come. Like, we lost our top 4 of our top 5 receivers are in the NFL on an NFL roster right now. That's Benson, a guy who was with the Patriots. I forgot a tight end. I can't think of his name right now. Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman. I mean, those are 4 of your top 5 targets. Murlock is back. Ja'Kai Douglas is back, but these guys weren't your focal points of your offense. If you lose your 3 top actual receiving targets, you should have a bunch of guys in there who don't have over 500 yards. I'm sorry, we weren't Washington. We weren't throwing the ball 1,000 times, and so I think that bodes well. In a world, if Malik Benson does what Keon Coleman did, has 700 over 700 yards and 11 touchdowns, is Malik Benson a bust, or was he good? Because I mean, that got a guy to be the #1 pick for the Buffalo Bills. If we have a guy that matches what Johnny Wilson's production was in 10 games of playing, then I think we did fine. I think we just have to step back and stop looking to be subpar. Like, we're fine. If our wide, like, it's supposed to be a battle. And the funny thing is the minute our wide receivers do well in a practice and somebody reports it, the first thing everybody does is, oh, maybe that means our defense isn't as good. Like, I don't get Florida. I'm starting to not. I'm not anti-Florida State fan. I don't understand it. We cried during Taggart. We cried during the latter half of Jimbo. We cried during the first 2 years of Norvell, and we've done nothing but win the last 2 years. And we're going into year 3, and there's nothing that they've shown us that shows that we should have a trajectory of going back to 3 wins or even going below 500. But FSU fans talk as if they've been defeated, and we haven't even played a game yet.
When they hear us, whoever, the Nolecast, anybody out there talk about the wide receivers and where it is versus last year, and there's not necessarily names out there, I think it's PTSD. They think we're going back to 2020 and 2021 and that, where there's no names in these things, but they just got to understand the talent is there. It just has to be given an opportunity. And again, we talked about this last night. I think y'all even talked about it on Krista's show the other day. Like, if you go back to last year at spring, before Keon Coleman got here, I mean, it was the same thing. You were talking about Darion Williamson and Kentron Portier. Those are your options for your other wide receiver out there with Johnny Wilson. Compared to that, I mean, you pluck Keon Coleman out, and the whole, like, the wide receiver room is on a completely, other level when you look at talent. You're not going to make the top list as far as wide receivers because of that. So when they look at David Hale's list and he's got Florida State at number 8 or number 9 or whatever at wide receiver, they freak out. They go to pull their hair out. Like, there's only one team, maybe 2, possibly, that has more wide receiver talent than Florida State. Georgia Tech, like I was saying earlier, they've signed 6 blue chips the past 4 years. Just give it time. Just take a deep breath. Norvell is he's gonna scheme some guys open. Somebody's gonna make a big play, gain that confidence, and it's gonna come. And everything we've heard, I've heard from talking to James or Chris or else, Malik Benson has really turned that corner. Like, we've got somewhere to start there. We have an electric wide receiver, and between Hakeem Williams, who hasn't been as consistent as you would hope, and Kentron Portier, you've got Jaylen Brown. There's so many guys battling out for that position that I have 100% faith Norvell's going to find somebody. Somebody will rise to the occasion, and I can't wait to see it. I'm ready for this thing to get kicked off and see what it's going to look like. Roydell Williams, James did a great breakdown on some of Trey Benson's NFL film, and talking about his time at Florida State. As great as he was, he's still got a lot to learn and a long ways to go. He wasn't the best as far as being patient and setting up blocks. He's kind of the anti-Le'Veon Bell, more James Wilder Jr., just smash it up in there. So Roydell Williams really has a good mix of what Trayshawn had, what Trey Benson had in his top end, what Lawrence Toafili has in his ability to catch passes out of the backfield and things of that nature. I think people are kind of underrating the explosivity of the run game and what it can be as the focal point of the offense. And even if that's just for one game and all of a sudden the passing game springs off of it, just have faith, y'all. It's not going to be the end of the world. We may not have the Bednarik, or not the Bednarik, I can't even. Biletnikoff. We may not have the Biletnikoff award winner. He's a Knoll, so I had to remember that and say that right. But we're going to be just fine at wide receiver. I think we'll end up having somewhere around 3,000 yards out of DJU. Maybe only 2,500 of it is passing, but this offense is going to be great.
The other thing too I'll say about DJU, and before that, people say, like what George just said, like, oh man, Mike Norvell, we're going to have to rely on Mike Norvell scheming it up. That's what the coaches are supposed to do. Like, you know, if you think that he's a good schemer, then that has to balance into your wide receiver, your chart. There's no way that you believe Florida State has the talent that they have, and you're saying that they're bottom half of the conference in wide receiver. Now, again, without putting it in context, if you want to just say they're bottom half because they don't have the guys that are producing, then that's a little bit different. But when you're looking at recruiting, whether it be transfer portal or in high school recruiting, and you're looking at what they got out there, I promise you, there's not 10 other teams in the conference that are saying, I'll take my guys over Florida State.